commitment, about our long-term effectiveness over the years, and about the fact that even though I'm looking around the room, I'm seeing folks that have been working on this for decades, folks who have been working on this for 5 years, folks who have been working on this for 2 years, folks who showed up today for the first time but recognize that they've been a part of this for a good chunk of their life regardless. Just thank you all so much, because this is proof that it's working. And so today, again, before we get started, just again want to appreciate all the different groups that are working on this. We have the Maryland Second Look Coalition. If someone wants to give, I don't know, I'm trying to give shout outs to folks. Someone wants to raise their hand to make sure they get, yeah, there you go. Thank you all. ACLU of Maryland, you might see some of our shirts around. You're definitely hearing from us. The Maryland Youth Justice Coalition, the Fenix Youth Project, coming all the way from Salisbury, Maryland. That's what I'm talking about. Baltimore Algebra Project, we all got that beat. Jews United for Justice. That's what I'm talking about. Young People for Progress. Racial Justice Now. And so again, there's a few other groups, and I apologize. I'm just super aware of the fact that I want to make sure everyone eats. I want to make sure that everyone's able to coordinate together, and I want to make sure that we're building together. So again, my name is Sergio Espana, Director of Engagement and Mobilization at the ACLU of Maryland. What we're going to be doing is, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to be hearing first from our Executive Director, our incredible leader, who's helped to make sure that we're pushing for this type of genuine solidarity coalition building, Dana Vicker-Shelley. So, yeah, and took it a proper intro, don't worry. And then we'll be hearing from our Public Policy Director, Unit Emanuel, and coalition partners as well. Then after we get a general overview of what we're doing, there's going to be a period for just general Q&A if folks have any questions on what bills we're going to be advocating for today. And then after that, we'll be going around with team leads to make sure that folks who are coming from different regions know who to reach out to for our lobby visits that will be starting at around 6:30, 6:45. So I think that's about all I'll share for now, because there's a lot of info coming. So again, just to kick us off, I want to turn it over to a genuine inspiration, an incredible leader, someone I can't stress enough motivates me to show up and push harder every day. Someone who's, I know for a fact, thanks to everyone's efforts, made our state better. Our Executive Director at the ACLU of Maryland, Ms. Dana Vicker-Shelley.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who's here tonight. I'm going to go off script just for a second. Who is attending their very first ACLU of Maryland Lobby Day? Let's cheer for those folks. Thank you so much. We know and we hope this won't be your last. I am so excited to see all of you in the room tonight, and I will say in our 6 years of having our lobby days, to know that this year we have a huge contingent of folks who are 25 years old and younger. And I am really excited that you're here tonight with us. In that 25 and under group, I've been here by myself for a couple years, so it's really nice to see all of you here to join me tonight. I'm Dana Vicker-Shelley, Executive Director of the ACLU of Maryland. It's really wonderful to meet all of you. Before I get started, I want to take a moment to thank the teams that put Lobby Day together and make sure that when we are in Annapolis and advocating for our work along with you, that they are leading the way and we are following and learning from both you and your communities as well as these leaders in our organization. Unit Emanuel, our Director of Public Policy, who you'll be hearing from a little bit more tonight in the beautiful pink jacket, as well as her team who you've seen through the room, Olivia, Frank, and Greg, and also to our Engagement and Mobilization Director, Sergio Espana, and his team, Sydney, Jared, Lorena, and Carlos, who are here this evening. You all put so much vision, heart, and work into making this great event happen. I also want to thank our coalition partners for collaborating with us and letting us learn from you and grow from you. Your efforts and your leadership are making not just this an event of great success, but the work that we are doing to remind the elected officials in this state that they work for you. They work for you. And that Black and brown children must be respected and cared for in their humanity. The ACLU of Maryland does our work in partnership with community leaders, and in particular, Marylanders with direct experience with oppression and with lived expertise in advocacy. This is how we make a difference. And we, the ACLU of Maryland, can only make a difference because of the work that you're doing. So again, I want to thank the Maryland Youth Justice Coalition, and feel free to stand up when I call your group out. Jews United for Justice, the Baltimore Algebra Project, the Baltimore Algebra Project. They're here. Thank you. The Maryland Second Look Coalition, the Fenix Youth Project. This is the extra shy group here in the corner with me. Racial Justice Now. Justly Love. Young People for Progress. Youth as Resources. And Advance Maryland. We're here tonight to focus on restorative justice. Voices for public safety for all, again, in particular, Black and brown children. Children. We don't say juveniles, we don't say youth. These are children. We want to provide voices for a second chance for so many Marylanders who have earned it. Unfortunately, you and I, we all see this every day. The headlines, posts, and commentary that seem designed to make us afraid. Some of those headlines truly are propaganda, the ones pumped out by Sinclair Broadcasting through their Fox stations. Exactly. Too often these stories are trying to scare us and are trying to make us forget the humanity of our sister and brother and colleagues across the state. We know our own communities, not Fox. And a reminder again, no matter what Fox 45 says, the legislators don't work for Fox 45, they work for us. More important than the propaganda on some media outlets, more important than that, I see your faces every day. The faces of people who know that restorative programs work, people who know that culturally responsive education works, who know that our children, our babies need compassion, not police abuse, and our children, our babies need support, not prison cells, in order to succeed and thrive. And who knows that our family members and neighbors inside have done the work and desire to be free, contributing to their families and communities. And on behalf of the ACLU of Maryland, again, I also want to thank those who have returned to community from inside. We appreciate you, we appreciate your leadership, we appreciate what we're learning from you, and we thank you for being, and we welcome you back home. Your stories need to be Your stories need to be told. You're sharing them today. You will as you meet with the delegates and the senators across the street or around the corner. Sergio and team will direct us. Again, they work for us, so let's make sure they're accountable to us in our neighborhoods, our counties, our jurisdictions, our streets. Again, who do they work for? Thank you. The truth is that overall crime is down, but you wouldn't know that watching some outlets. The facts are very different from the headlines, and tonight we're going to be sharing facts, just facts, period. But more resources and time are needed so that restorative programs and approaches that have the space and funding are needed to work. The truth is that as a society, we have a responsibility to give the opportunity to provide a second chance to folks who have demonstrated rehabilitation. This is nothing revolutionary. It should be the core of how the legal justice system works. And at the ACLU of Maryland, with your support and guidance and counsel, we're making that happen. And the truth is that now the time is finally here to end the politicized role of governors in the parole process. Sick and dying Marylanders who are inside need medical parole and must have access to fair and expeditious parole processes. We can do this. We must do this. And I'm so grateful that we get to do it together. Thank you again for your partnership and leadership. I don't want to start calling names because I'll leave someone out, but now I feel like I really need to. I am so happy to be here in this space again, learning from Zakiya, Beverly, Dr. Johnson, Lawrence, so many people, Molly, Evan, people from across the state and across the community. Thank you for being a part of what we do, and you hold us accountable as well because we work for you. Thank you so much.
Maya, we go to the next slide. Awesome. So again, we're going to now be going through our priorities. First off, I want to introduce the director, co-director of Racial Justice Now, Zakiya, who's, Zakiya has been a movement leader across our state and has been someone that's made sure that we're always speaking truth to power and always speaking truth to ourselves. I keep thinking about what you shared at our at a forum that we had back in December, of just pointing out the obviousness of what's happening here. It's not that we're trying to defend ourselves, that we're trying to hold the line. It's that we need to call out the explicit, intentional racism that we're challenging. Zakiya's gonna do a much better job than anything I gotta say about her work, so I'm gonna pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sergio. You are a great colleague. I appreciate the entire team at ACLU of Maryland, Yannette, who is amazing in the role that she has at ACLU of Maryland, but she's also one of my closest friends here in the state. For those of you who do not know me, I am Zakiya Jabbar. I am the co-executive director for Racial Justice Now. Our organization has been around since 2011. We were actually founded in Dayton, Ohio, and we launched our DMV chapter, or Maryland chapter, in Montgomery County, which is where we reside, Montgomery County, Maryland, in 2019. Our work sits at the intersection of education and racial justice. We specifically fight against the horrificness, right, of anti-Blackness and how that shows up really everywhere. It is systemic, it's personal, it's everywhere, unfortunately. And certainly it is involved in our legal processes. It's involved in laws. Unfortunately, laws in this country has been anti-Black since its inception. I have to remind people all the time, because we do this work to end the school to prison pipeline specifically, that it was indeed against the law for Black people, African people, to even learn how to read for many, many years. So a lot of things that we see happen, these are not things people just thought of recently. It literally has a legacy rooted in discarding the humanity of African people, Black people specifically. So when we look at the proposed law that we're all here to talk about today with our legislators, where they literally want to open up jails and cages for 10-year-old kids. But it's not just 10-year-old kids, right? It's like specific children. Let's be very real. The facts are, in Maryland, in DJS, over 70% of children in DJS are Black. That is a fact. That is how anti-Blackness shows up. I want to be very clear. Black people, Black children are not inherently evil, are not inherently ignorant, or anything that still exists in some way, some fashion or form in policies and practices in this country. That's how you have a racial disparity of over 70% being in DJS. It's because it's rooted in race science, something called eugenics. You don't hear that word very much anymore, but it is very much alive in literally everything that we do, particularly alive in our laws. It's the idea that, well, Black kids are just worse. And there are people, including Black people, right? Because we have been miseducated and educated against ourselves like everyone else, that literally think that Black children are just worse. And it's not true. There's research that points to that, particularly from Dr. Russ Skiba. I would encourage everyone in here, if you're not familiar with Dr. Russ Skiba, he was a scholar over at Indiana State University, and he has written several research reports that confirm what we should already know, is that Black children do not misbehave any more than any other race of children. What is different is Black children are treated than other children in this country when they make mistakes. And so that's why we're all here today. I think that it's really important that we understand the history. That way we don't think that this is something new, right? We're dealing with, unfortunately, century-old ideologies that refuse to die. It just refused to die. And sadly, here in Maryland, particularly in Montgomery County, there is this idea that it's supposed to be a very progressive, a very forward-thinking place. However, even in Maryland and in Montgomery County, we still have race disproportionality when it comes to who's being impacted by the school-to-prison pipeline in Maryland's largest school system, Montgomery County Public Schools. And so we do a lot of work inside and outside of MCPS specifically to force these people to recognize the humanity of Black children, period. And we do that in a way that is unapologetic. So with that, I am glad to be here with each and every one of you. This is probably one of the largest lobby days that I've seen since I've been participating in these events. I also want to take an opportunity before I take my seat to introduce some of the young people that came here with us today from Montgomery County. The school-to-prison pipeline in Montgomery County, similar to other places, disproportionately impacts Black students, but in particular Black male students. So at Racial Justice Now, we collaborated with some young folks that includes my son, Amir, and some other young people to recognize, right, and to make sure that other people recognize the unique humanity of Black male children. So I'd like to ask them to stand. Wes May is here. He's a part of Brotherly Love, the group. Javier Sandy is here. Amir Lumumba, who is also my son. Several met him and also gave to him recently. And finally, we have Muhammad Samara, who is also a part of our students in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Nina Emanuel. I'm the Full Policy Director here with the ACLU of Maryland, and like my colleague said, thank you so much for all of you for coming out here tonight. It does make all the difference having you all down here and speaking directly with your legislators on these issues. So just to follow up on what Zakiya said, and please bear with me because I lost my notes, so I'm going strictly off my head. What we're here today is to push back against the leadership package, the crime bill package that was introduced a couple of weeks ago. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in the bill and what's on the table currently. But before I start, I just want to say that for the last several years, there's been some remarkable things that we've been able to get done down here thanks to the community organizing and building off the years of organizing on these issues. And one of them includes the Child Interrogation Protection Act, which simply requires that before police are able to interrogate a child has the opportunity to consult with an attorney and have age and development appropriate explanation of their Miranda rights. And the second, that their parents are properly notified that they are getting ready to interrogate their child as well. And additionally, the Juvenile Restoration Act was passed in 2022, which raised the minimum age that a child could be arrested to 13, unless it was a crime of violence. Children from 10 to 12 could still be arrested for crimes of violence. But ultimately, the goal of that bill was to reduce intake in the criminal legal system for minor offenses, because prior to that, the majority of children that were entangled with the Department of Juvenile Services were there for minor offenses. And so what we're seeing right now is a backlash to the reforms that we passed, both on police accountability, the Child Interrogation Protection Act, the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, and it's built off of no real data. They don't have any data to prove that, one, for starters, one of the things that this bill does, and it's SB 744 in the Senate and HB 814 in the House, is that it expands the list of offenses that a 10 to 12-year-old can be incarcerated, detained for. So currently a child, like I mentioned, between 10 to 12 can be arrested for crimes of violence, but what this bill is seeking to do is expand those lists of offenses to include weapons offenses, firearm offenses, animal cruelty, third-degree sex offense, and auto theft. But they have not been able to provide any data to prove that their uptick in crime falls within children, within those age groups. But what it does is expand the net of incarceration that kids can be put into the legal system for. In addition to that, the bill extends the time period in which a child can be on probation and adds penalties for children who may miss appointments while on probation. So under the bill, if a child has two or more unexcused absences, that is a detainable offense. In addition to that, it changes the intake process within the Department of Juvenile Services by requiring that certain cases are automatically forwarded to the state's attorney's office, which limits the department's ability to do an informal adjustment, which means defer them to diversion programs or other alternatives aside from incarceration. You have the list of other things that the bill does, and I won't go through everything, but what it doesn't do is address what we've been hearing for the last year is an uptick in violent crime, which is also not true, as Zakiya and others have mentioned. Violent crime is trending downwards. There's been slight uptick in certain offenses like carjacking, auto theft, but still children only make up less than 10% of crime. Though if you watch the news, that the majority of crime is being committed by children, and that's simply not true. What's also not true is that the laws that we passed over the last few years are the reason for this uptick. That's simply not true. This is a nationwide trend that we're seeing, and these laws cannot be blamed for them, especially when most of them have only been in law for less than 2 years. But what we are seeing is a deliberate intent to have fear control the narrative and drive our policy issues, which we've seen happen before in the 90s and 2000s, and what we've been doing the last couple of years is trying to undo the harm that was done then, and this is an attempt to send us backwards. And so glad to see a room full of people here, because what your legislators need is to hear directly from you. Because when legislators are debating these issues, they're only hearing from one side, and if they don't hear a counter from all of you, they're only going to listen to that one side, and that's why it's incredibly important that all of you are here today to push back on those efforts. So again, a lot of the information is in your packets, and I'll be around to answer any questions folks might have. But thank you again for all being here. This is really incredibly important. Thank you all. And next we're going to hear from Magdalena, who is an incredible advocate and has been helping convene the Maryland Second Look Coalition, and I will let her talk to you all more about the Second Look Act, which is an incredibly important bill that we're been working on this session, and also happy to have you all here to advocate on behalf, because with all of us working together on this, I do think we can get this done, and it is not impossible. So thank you all for being here again.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Yannette. Again, my name is Magdalena Chungus. I'm the convener of the Maryland Second Book Coalition. And first, I just want to thank people who came out tonight to advocate on behalf of someone who you love who's incarcerated. Because I think a lot of times we see legislators passing laws that impact people who are in prison, and they don't understand, right, that those people are also somebody's son or somebody's father or somebody's mother and are loved. And we're here to show them that those people are loved and that if given a second chance can thrive when coming back into the community. And then to the rest of you too, who might not be familiar with Second Look, I really appreciate you being willing to have those conversations with legislators as well about why second chances are so important. So I want to give you a little overview of what the Maryland Second Look Act does. Straightforward, it's after 20 years of incarceration, people have the ability to ask a judge to modify their sentence. So they go in front of a judge and have a hearing and get to say, this is what I've done over these past 20 years in prison and why it should impact my sentence such that it be changed, right? And this is really important because what we know in Maryland is that Maryland incarcerates the highest percentage of Black people in the country, 71% of the prison population, which is more than twice the national average, okay? And Maryland also, right, leads the nation incarcerating young Black men at a rate higher than even Mississippi, right? So we have this idea of Maryland maybe as being a more progressive state, democratically controlled, but the reality is when it comes to incarceration, we have really high rates of disparities, particularly for Black men in prison, and really extreme sentences, and not a lot of ability for people to get a second look at those sentences. So as we meet with legislators, I think some things they might ask you about is the juvenile, the JRA, which gave people who were 17 or younger when they incarcerated a chance to get a second look after 20 years, right? But that bill only gave people who were incarcerated before the bill was passed that chance. So if you're 17 today and you are incarcerated, you won't have that second look unless the Maryland Second Look Act passes, right? If you were 18 when you were incarcerated, you don't have that ability to get a second look, right? And so what's really important is that we know if you're 18 or 19 years old, 20 years in prison is your entire lifetime that when you were free, and it's enough time for somebody to be a different person and to have demonstrated their rehabilitation. And if they don't have that opportunity to go in front of a judge and show that they've changed, they might spend, right, a lifetime in prison. So that's why this bill is really important, to get people a chance to get that second look. And we have a lot of amazing people here today who have shown that after doing decades in prison, you can come home and be successful and thrive in the community, and have careers and support other people who are coming home and support kids to help them not get involved in the system too. And so that's really important in this conversation when we're talking about the criminalization of kids again, is that we tried that already, right? And tough on crime laws have resulted in these huge disparities in our prison system. And instead of turning to that, we need to invest in things that actually work in preventing crime and invest in these guys who are credible messengers and doing that violence prevention work, a lot of which are still in prison and haven't been given that second chance to do that work. I think something else you might hear in your conversations with legislators, they might ask you about parole. They'll say, well, what about parole? Can't we just send everybody to go up for parole? And that's going to address this issue. It's a little complicated, but I'll give you a couple bullet points. First of all, not everybody gets to go up for parole. Some people don't have parole. Other thing is when people go up for parole, they don't have what's called a presumption of release. So they go up for parole, it doesn't mean you're gonna get out. A lot of people get denied time and time again, right? And serve decades in prisons, going up every 3 or 5 years and not getting released. And what a judge can do that a parole board cannot is change your sentence. A parole board can parole you out and then you serve the rest of your sentence in the community on parole. A judge can say, I'm going to change your sentence such that it's not parole for the rest of your life, right? And that's an important part of that. And then something else that legislators probably don't know is prior to 2004, people who were incarcerated used to be able to go in front of a judge and ask for a modification hearing whenever they wanted in their sentence. Right now, they don't have that ability, right? If you want to have your sentence modified, currently, you have to file in the first 90 days to ask for a modification, and a judge has the first 5 years of your sentence to change your sentence. If you were sentenced to 40 years in prison, a judge is probably not going to change your sentence in that first 5 years. So that's why it's really important to give people that opportunity after doing 20 years to get sentence modification, okay? And again, this isn't a ticket home for anybody. It really is just an opportunity to go in front of a judge and for that judge to decide, have you done enough to have your sentence modified? So again, I'm really grateful for everyone to be willing to talk about this bill with your legislators. And if there are any questions similar to Yannette, I can answer those questions for you all.